And welcome to the Catholic Answers Live Super Show, which we are going to rename at some point, but we're going to have some kind of contest for renaming it. So please think about it. Don't put it in the notes, though, because somebody will steal your idea. I mean, I have very little faith in people, so excuse me for that, but come up with a good name, and you could be the grand prize winner. What's the grand prize going to be? Something huge, right? Something giant?
Huge. A book.
Okay. But a really, maybe like the big book of Catholic Answers?
Book. I mean, who better to talk about big books than...
That is a huge book. We were going to call it the huge book of Catholic Answers.
That would have...
We went with alliteration.
Without the H, though.
Yeah.
The huge book. The huge book of Catholic Answers. Edgar... Lujano. I can never remember your last name.
It's okay.
Todd Agliolaro.
Hello.
Yeah, you probably all know Edgar, but just as a reminder, Todd is our director of publishing here, and we publish a lot, and he has to do a lot of directing. And sometimes he's in his office wearing headphones. Am I supposed to talk about that or not?
Well, directing is my passion, Si, so I used to act, but I always wanted to direct.
You are a good director. Todd has directed some videos here that are really good, and it's really good to receive Todd's direction. Like, he'll say things like, maybe just speak like a human being would speak, stuff like that.
Be funnier somehow.
Yeah, be funnier. Maybe do the lines the way I wrote them, that kind of stuff. But you actually are a very good director.
Oh,
I've enjoyed being in some of your short films.
Being directed?
Even though I go back and look at them, I'm like, oh, man, I am a bad actor. But Dogs in Communion, you want to start talking about that?
Starting light, huh?
I guess so. I mean, this one, I actually felt kind of crestfallen when you said it.
Can I just say this, though? Yeah. Whenever you ask, where is this madness coming from? Whenever we talk about things happening in the church, where does it usually come from?
Well, I know where this came from, so I don't want to say. But
It's Europe. Let's be honest. We all know.
Is Europe just out of control? I don't know. Europe thinks we're out of control, so I don't know. Wait, there's no weirdness anywhere else? Isn't there some weirdness in other parts?
There is weirdness somewhere else, but think about it. The last few super shows we've done has covered the weirdness that's happening.
Oh, in Europe, you're right.
In Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Iceland thinks it's part of Europe, so we'll count Iceland as part of Europe. They think of themselves as Europeans.
Are they European? Would you consider them European? They're Scandinavians?
I mean, geographically, they're not European, but I think that they're like the Hawaii of Europe.
Except not as nice.
Except not as Hawaiian. Okay, so let me just read you guys a little bit from The Pillar from Michelle La Rosa. I almost said De La Rosa. Which makes you think of what? Joe Heschmeyer's shirt, De La Rosa, marzipan. Remember when Joe dressed up as marzipan for the show?
That, yep. It wasn't
Halloween
Halloween
either.
either.
No, Joe wore them. I'm sorry, I digressed a bit. I can fill that out if you're curious, but I can also just move on. What do you suggest?
Marzipan is kind of yummy. I'd like to hear the rest of the...
All right, but not like French marzipan.
Like Mexican marzipan.
Oh, that I've never had.
It's amazing.
Peanut
it's
sugar.
pretty amazing.
Peanut sugar. I don't know how else to describe it. It's peanut sugar. It comes in a little round medallion. It's in cellophane. It's got a red rose on the front of it, and they sell it in like the corner store.
And this is how Mexicans learn how to use their fine motor skills to try to not break it when you're opening it up. It's actually a bit of a test.
I've never eaten that stuff without wearing it. It's just like I breathed. Oh shoot!
And is that how Joe impersonated marzipan, by wearing it?
He had a white shirt with a red piping on it, with a red rose right here that looked exactly, to me, it looked exactly like De La Rosa is the name of that marzipan, and they put a red rose on the front of it. So I thought he had dressed up as marzipan for the show.
That sounds like a Joe thing, for sure.
To dress up as marzipan?
Yeah.
He does not make not all of his sartorial choices are adult. I don't know how else to put it. All right, let me read a little bit about what it says in The Pillar. Swiss Catholics out of doghouse over Eucharistic desecration. That's actually a funnier headline than I think this story deserves. I don't think you should be, that's a little too light for the story, I think.
Yeah.
Michelle La Rosa wrote it. A Swiss diocese has announced that 3 people who shared the Eucharist with their dogs have not been excommunicated because they did not act with sacrilegious intent. The Diocese of Chur announced in an April 17th statement that it had completed an investigation into an incident that took place at a blessing of animals held last October 4th at Good Shepherd Parish in Zurich. I feel like I want to throw up when I hear that someone fed the Eucharist. Like, I feel like that's viscerally icky, like hateful. How do you feel about it?
Well, the first thing I want to do is get my head wrapped around what the thought process was there. So if it wasn't truly intended to be sacrilegious,
Yeah.
so it wasn't someone doing something performative or
Right, like, oh, I'll just give this to my dog.
yeah,
That's
or
what it means to
putting
me.
it on YouTube or something.
Yeah.
Could it be? Look, they had this blessing of animals. It's supposed to be outside. They move it inside the church. I guess they were allowed to bring their dogs in.
Yeah,
which is
I guess so,
like
because it was raining out.
checkpoint number one, where you got to maybe think about what you're doing, bringing the dog into the church.
Right, maybe just cancel the blessing of the animals.
Yeah, or go into a tent or something. But
Or do it real quick.
Yeah,
Goodbye,
get a little bit
in the
wet.
time that you went like this to come into the church, you could have just gone like this.
exactly, they had to
Whole
cross the
thing would be
parking lot
over.
anyway.
Yeah.
Bless the water, you're good to go, right? It's
And then there's mass, and then you receive. So then you think to yourself, did they go up with their dogs? Did they bring it back to the pew?
I don't have
and say
clarity.
half for me and half for you, Fido? What was the scene? There's not enough detail there for me.
No, there's not enough. But there apparently was for the diocese, because they said this is not a violation of the canon law, which reads, one who throws away the consecrated species or for a sacrilegious purpose takes them away or keeps them incurs a latae sententiae excommunication reserved to the apostolic see. That would just mean reserved to the bishop, right?
yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
So they could have handled this two ways. They could have said, "Look, you're not excommunicated, or you actually are excommunicated, but I'm the bishop and I lift the excommunication." But I don't know. That's like, I kind of think you should be excommunicated for this. But I understand that the intent is a big deal here.
I feel like that's what it hinges on right now is that idea of
Maybe they were-
intent.
So here's
Yeah.
two ways of slicing intent.
like if it was a child, no.
Right. Well, then
'Cause-
you wouldn't even have the agency probably to excommunicate yourself. But here's two ways to slice intent. Intent number one is formal intent. I intend to do something sacrilegious because I hate God and I want to desecrate the Eucharist.
Yeah.
And then there's a kind of material intent, which I intend to do something that is by its nature sacrilegious. So let's say I wanted.
Yeah, right.
There was a scandal many years ago after World Youth Day in the United States where people were selling hosts that they took back from the outdoor mass, and they were selling them on eBay. Jeez. Now it's entirely possible that the person selling them thought he was doing a service by bringing a neat souvenir from a religious event. to people.
Right.
But isn't that essentially sacrilegious to sell a host online?
Yeah, like how much? Right, because the intent can mean like I think that's very well put. Formal or material intent. So the thing is de facto sacrilegious.
Mm-hmm.
It is. You did a sacrilege, but so it doesn't. But it does say for a sacrilegious purpose. So it doesn't say you did a sacrilegious act.
Sacrilegiously on purpose. The sacrilegious purpose is to give it to your dog. I think that's the material.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
How much lack of catechesis must there be for this to be, oops, sorry, I didn't realize this was a thing?
Like that's the other side of this is what did these people think they were doing? Like maybe they weren't Catholic. I don't know, but
Well, Todd, you made a good point of. Oh, no, I'm blanking. Never mind. Go ahead. Sorry. I completely blanked on.
Well, I was thinking about.
you did.
Yes, I know.
Let's draw attention to this.
Go ahead.
Well, at my own parish once, I saw a woman pocket, kind of clasp the host. I happened to be right behind her. So my antennae were up. I followed her out into the narthex, and she had an infant. And she broke a piece of the host, and she gave it to her infant.
Okay.
Now, that probably is not sacrilegious. It's highly illicit. But I wonder if there might not be a similar kind of thought process, back to your point about catechesis. God loves the dogs, right? We're here to have them blessed. Doesn't Jesus love the dog? Doesn't Jesus want to feed the dog with his spiritual life or whatever. I mean, I could see someone even moderately catechized, but maybe badly formed otherwise.
Yeah. Jesus loves the dog. Why wouldn't he want this?
Well, and people treat their animals like children now.
Like
What they call them, fur babies now.
Yeah.
And that's first world things. You don't see that in the third world. Animals are for the outside, as my parents always said.
Yeah.
They don't come inside. So, but I see more animals pampered in America and Europe than I do see children. And I even see this as an experience when I'm walking around with my son, and depending on the crowd. So if you go to a church or something, someplace like that, then everybody fawns over the baby. Like everybody just, oh, such a cute baby, such a cute baby. But when you're out in public,
Bragger.
Yes, I have to.
Yeah, all right, go ahead.
But when you're in public, in non-religious places, what I've noticed is when I'm walking around with Emiliano, and there are dogs, people fawn over the dogs more than they fawn over the babies, and it's just like there's almost like this immediate attraction. Oh, the dog is so cute.
Right.
Yeah, it's got a little coat
French
on.
bulldog.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a little. Look at his little hat.
I am embarrassed to say I was at a thrift store with Lena and I saw this little stroller thing. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool looking. She's like, that's for a dog. Like, there's no way. It's a stroller for a dog.
Yeah.
Because they can't be bothered to walk.
No.
Yeah. It just blows my mind.
Well, there is a sickness about animals in our culture, I know people feel like you're being negative. Like, I really love dogs. I think dogs are awesome. I feel like 20,000 years ago, or whenever that first wolf decided to hang around and not eat everybody, God had a plan. He wanted people to have dogs around. And I think they're wonderful, but they're dogs, you know? Like, my wife gets mad at me because when I see people with dogs with paralysis, that they have a little wheelchair for the dog. Have you seen
really?
this?
No.
I always say to her, there's a cure for that. And she knows exactly what I mean. But like, putting an animal down is not cruel. It's cruel to make a paralyzed animal go through life.
That sounds speciest.
I am totally speciest. I am completely speciest. So I don't, but we've completely lost that idea that the animal is an animal. Like,
that was one of the best things, one of my favorite things that Pope Francis said when he was Pope. If you remember...
I want to see the full list of your favorite things that Pope Francis said.
Next time. Where he mentioned that he had chided a woman. Now, Francis, we knew, often composited his stories, and maybe this was a composited story, but he chided a woman for presenting a dog for a blessing, saying you should have a baby, not a dog. Do you remember this?
Yes.
That, yeah.
Yeah, good for him.
And then he kind of segued into an economic sermon that I liked less, but he saw that pretty clearly, and that it has to be a symptom of the demographic suicide that the West is currently in the middle of.
Right. Yeah, because you have we have within us that desire for parenthood. If you suppress it, or if you say, well, I don't want that carbon footprint, they think a baby is a carbon footprint. And so for whatever reason, you get talked into suppressing that. You still have it.
But nature abhors a vacuum. Or the gas has got to get squeezed someplace. They even talk about plant moms now. There's a TV commercial that I just saw recently that used the phrase plant mom for someone who takes care of a green leafy thing in a pot. And that is absolutely what you're talking about, Cy, that parental instinct with we're imbued.
Is directed to animals.
That's how perverse we become.
But it's interesting. There was a reel that was going viral, I think a couple of weeks ago, and it's a video of a girl with her friends. This girl had a baby and passed it on to her friends.
Oh, I love this video.
And
Did you see this video?
No.
She starts
it's
crying,
wonderful.
holding
It's
this
wonderful.
baby, and all the ladies are like high-pitched squeals. And it's like my friend's holding a baby for the first time. The friends that said I never want to have kids, and here they are, and like the maternal instinct is coming out.
Oh, that makes me want to cry. That's
And the
beautiful.
girl starts crying and says,
Yeah.
I've got to have, like, what does she
Yeah.
say? Like 200 of these or something. She says, like,
Yeah.
but she's so overcome. And that is how, first of all, it's really a sad symptom of our society that any of us gets to 18-year-old, and that's the first time we've held a baby. I mean, I think I was 1 year old the first time I held a baby, because that's just, the next kid comes along, you just stick them on top of the kid that came before.
When we were at Mass today, all the little Delosiers were in there.
Wasn't that great?
And I don't know, like the 2-year-old was holding the 1-year-old.
Yeah, right.
It was so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And so it's sad that we get to 18 and this is the first time she's held a baby, but that emotional reaction, super healthy.
Yeah.
Super healthy. It's a beautiful little piece of video.
It goes to show that when you're living in a society that lacks children, that instinct has to be translated somewhere else. Like it doesn't go away. It's
Sublimated.
Yeah, it's placed somewhere else. There's another video that was making the rounds of. It was a family with a baby was walking around Japan, and they were saying how scarce babies are in Japan, that everywhere they went, just everybody just gawking over the baby like they'd never seen one. It goes to show you, the instinct comes out no matter where you go. It doesn't matter how technological or advanced or progressive you try to be. It's always going to be there.
And that's the female instinct. I would argue the male instinct is to take the baby and throw it up in the air.
Yeah.
And then catch it repeatedly.
Yeah. Well, I'm realizing that I go home and now I'm able to throw Emiliano around a little bit more.
Are ya?
Yes, it's so much fun. And I realize
Don't tell her when you drop him. Like this, so many men are stupid about this. Just never bring it up when you drop him.
Well, I didn't realize. For me, again, it comes to second nature. You just want to throw the baby around and throw him on a pillow.
You want to
just
have fun with the
giggling.
baby, yeah.
Exactly. And she told me, she's like, I really like that you do that because you make it look so easy. And I'm like, what do you mean make it look so easy? And meanwhile, I look at her and she's, cleaning out his nose because he's got snot, and she's cleaning up his face and
Moms
everything.
are great.
And I'm like, that just seems miserable to me.
Yeah.
And for her, it's like it just comes natural to her.
Yeah.
And yeah, the way we're wired is different.
Isn't
and
it great
and
we
I
have
love
all
it.
those social constructs that force
Social
us to do these
constructs,
things?
yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody-
Those
that's
darn
a-
social constructs.
There's so many ways to explain away what is just obvious about us. Like I have to say, I was watching that. I heard that there was another assassination attempt on the president, and so we turned on the TV, and I always get the same feeling when I see a formal evening of the men wear black with a black tie, the women wear every color under the sun, every texture of fabric, every cut. That it's just so obvious that we desire two completely different things. And like nothing brings out that men and women are really different than a formal evening. Even the shoes. Like, if there's 100 women, there's 100 different styles of shoes. 100 men, maybe 2
Black and brown.
styles of shoes. Yeah, right. So, but I know that you see that, and it's the most obvious thing in the world. But there are people who go, "That's a social construct. That's because when they were girls." Blah, 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 blah. No, that's not what did it. Like, women are beautiful. they appreciate beautiful in a way that men just can't, just don't.
I love what Dr. Edgar says. He says, if you hand a boy a doll, he will turn that thing into a submachine gun in a matter of seconds.
Yeah,
Just
right.
go. Yeah.
But I heard him say, he says so many funny things, but he goes, yeah, they say that about the social construct thing, but I've never been out with a bunch of guys and one of them turned to the other one and went, cute top. I love that. So I don't know how we got onto that, but dogs.
Dogs are the new babies. That's how we got onto that.
That's right.
Well, this is horrifying because they don't understand the Eucharist clearly, or they would not have given it to the dog. 2, I think that probably does point to an inflated sense of what the dog is, which means you're not living in reality. You're living in unreality.
But
We don't want people to live in unreality.
Is the church aiding and abetting that by having, quasi-liturgical rites for dogs, like they did there in Switzerland?
Yeah, right. I wonder if that's the case.
And maybe you just, you need a good old Catholic balance there. Of course, we love nature and we
bless everything.
And we bless just about everything.
There's really almost nothing that can't get blessed.
But maybe that stops at the entrance, unless you've got like a service dog or something. But maybe that stops at the doors of the church itself.
I don't think the animals should come in to the church. But there's a lot of things that shouldn't come into the church. Most of the music that comes into the church shouldn't come into the church. But yeah, there's just not the sense of reverence that this place is holy, this place is reserved. It's just not there. And the dogs got elevated to a position in society that I personally find really inconsiderate in many, like, the animals are in restaurants, they're in there's all this, and I think I didn't ask for, I got a dog at home. I came to this restaurant. I don't want your dog.
Bite your tongue, because people get indignant if you deny their fur baby their proper place wherever they happen to be.
No, I want their fur baby to have their proper place, which is not inside the restaurant with me.
Well, not Costco. Trader Joe's just put a sign up saying it wasn't effective at all because people were still bringing their dogs into the grocery store.
That's gross to bring your dog into the grocery store. Stop it.
There was a big sign out front, and it said, "We love our fur animals or fur babies and all of this." And at the very bottom it says, "But please, don't bring them in."
Yeah.
They fluffed it up so much that people were like,
just,
they read the first couple lines.
Oh,
I'm glad it's
dog.
on. Yeah. Come on in. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
good for Costco.
But you can't say no to anybody. We're just an entitled society. I do like the restaurants that say no. No, dogs don't come in here.
This almost gets. I'm going to get a little bit psychoanalytic here, but the best kinds of pet owners, your pet is your companion. It's a recreational accessory.
Mm-hmm.
The ones who are really insufferable, to me, there's a kind of narcissism where the dog is almost a reflection of yourself, and almost like another self. I once was in a Joann Fabrics or someplace. What was I doing in there? Maybe getting something for Pinewood Derby.
Mm-hmm.
And
sure.
a woman had...
You were getting a pattern.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
I was getting some doilies. And a woman had a dog-clothed dog. And I kind of stepped past her in the aisle, and she went, "Excuse us."
Oh, us. Yeah, right. Excuse us.
With the emphasis on the us, like you've
offended me.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Excuse us.
Our overlord here.
And so I don't know, getting into the psychology of the pet dad or mom who does that kind of thing. It's more than just the love that they have for the animal. It's something wrapped up in their own psyche. I don't know. I got to think about this some more.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I know what you're saying, though. There's a sense in which you offend that dog, you have offended me personally.
Right, and it goes beyond. You don't like a thing I like.
Yeah, right.
It's something you cut to their own heart.
Yeah. Did you have a dog when your kids grew up or no?
No, I don't like dogs.
You don't? Did you have any animal?
We had hamsters. We had a hamster named Thomas, and then it died. And then we got another hamster that was smaller, and we told the kids that we had to take Thomas to the hospital, and they had to shave him to do an operation. So he was Thomas 2.
This is awesome. This is so much better than what I was.
I was a cat family growing up, but I tell you, the animal I love is my little bird. I have a little lovebird named Tom Bombadil. Another Tom. Look at that. We have two pets named Tom.
Yeah.
Thomas. And I'm really attached to that little flying rodent, I have to say.
Well, we had a dog, and I wanted the kids to have a dog, and maybe that's why you had the other animals that you had. Is we're a suburban family. Like, they need to be comfortable with animals. They need to be around animals. Enjoy, learn that you can go get off the couch and the dog gets off the, like you have to be worried about animals. So I think it's good. I like dogs. I'm in favor of dogs. I just think
I don't have a special animus. I'm going to get the hate mail now from saying I don't like dogs. Dogs are fun. I'm dog neutral. I'm a little bit afraid of them since I was a kid, so there's deep waters there as well. But I'm wholly with you with what you're saying about all the value of owning a pet, caring for the pet, being responsible, and then when it dies, there's a lesson there too.
Yeah, right.
But then you have the people who, when the dog dies, it is immortalized in your life in so many ways, from tattoos to it's all over your clothes to pictures like they're a family member. And I've even seen taxidermy. and keeping them in the home for the rest of your life.
Oh,
so
yeah.
there's that. Gets a little weird.
I tell you what, though, I got really, really emotional when the dog that was raised with my kids, the dog that was their dog. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, the death of that dog really affected me because I say it's because I love the dog, but also the dog like symbolized all those years, like all that time that dog was there with the kids and the dog, go.
That's how it starts.
But I also think animals animals are healing to people, and I do think animals are a sign of God's love, and that some people who really have been hurt in this world or are traumatized or sad, the dog really does mean something wonderful to that person. I just don't. But there was a time when you could do that, when you could be the person who that dog really comforted you. The presence of the dog was providing something that you couldn't get from human interactions, but that it was still, you didn't bring that dog into the grocery store. You didn't bring that dog into the butcher shop.
You didn't give the dog the Eucharist.
Because people knew. You certainly didn't give the dog the Eucharist. No. So.
And you didn't think that, or didn't assert that dog was. No, I'm not going to go to the question of whether dogs go to heaven. Never mind. Next topic.
Oh no, we're getting into this now.
So, Todd, do dogs go to heaven? Is the question.
I'm going to go from hate mail to getting my house fire bombed. So
that's what it took, huh?
I feel like the answer to will my dog go to heaven is just to assure the person, well, the dog's not going to hell. We know that for sure. So.
It's going out to be with a nice farm family in the country.
Where did we get this Rainbow Bridge thing, too? Like, everybody talks about, the dog went over the Rainbow Bridge.
It's a Jehovah's Witness paradise for them, okay?
For the dog? I hope it is. I hope it is. Yeah, I hope it's all the Jehovah's Witnesses and the dogs.
Trot through the fields, go.
But it's not going to be that, my Jehovah's Witnesses friends, because Jesus is God. Jesus is God, and he will bring you to himself. Just let him. All right, you guys want to move on to another story? I know you have a fun story you wanted to do now. You want to do the fun story?
No, let's.
You sure you don't want to do the fun story?
I don't have a fun story.
I know you don't.
Think of one.
I couldn't think of one either.
We're just a bunch of grouchy guys here.
Chapita didn't help me at all.
It's like, it's all horrible out there.
You know who Chapita is?
Chapita? No, I can guess. That's good.
Okay. That's his.
It's the Mexican version.
It's so much easier to say.
Okay, I read this story and I was like, I want to talk about this on the air with Todd and Edgar. Actually, I didn't care who I wanted somebody to talk about this. All right.
You did mention replacing us.
There's a news service. I put news in quotes here called MS Now. It used to be MSNBC. But it was too crazy even for MSNBC. So at least this is the story I was told. I don't know exactly how. But apparently it was so crazy, they said not even NBC can handle this. So Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice, went down to Austin, Texas, and he made a pretty good speech down there where he talked about our rights coming from God and not from the government. Well, here is the response. One of two responses that I found on MS Now. This is by someone named Paul Waldman. And Paul Waldman says, what Clarence Thomas doesn't understand about democracy, this is the headline, the Supreme Court Justice's insistence that rights come from God, not government, couldn't be more wrong. Oof. So how do you feel about this so far?
Tell us how you really feel.
I know. Like what I don't like, I never like what so-and-so doesn't get. Like, there's such a thing as people disagreeing with you. They get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's very dismissive.
It is very dismissive. Okay, so this is what Paul Waldman has to say. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas gave a speech Thursday at the University of Texas at Austin attacking progressivism as the enemy of all that America stands for. I don't know if that could very well be a completely dispassionate description, but it seems, I don't know, though. I don't know what he said about progressivism. There's a quote here. Progressivism seeks to replace the basic premises of the Declaration of Independence and hence our form of government, Thomas said, because it holds that our rights and our dignities come not from God, but from government. Oh, I see what's happening here. I missed how that first paragraph unfolded. I did not read the first paragraph carefully.
Did the quote start with progressivism or after progressivism?
It starts with that was Thomas. Progressivism
Okay.
seeks to replace the base. So Thomas made this assertion, and this guy's going to tell us why Thomas is wrong by actually proving him right in the following paragraphs. It's not a new idea, especially in Republican circles. Was Thomas Jefferson a Republican?
I don't know.
He was not a Republican.
Okay.
The Republican Party did not
It didn't
exist
start till
until the 1860s or 1850s. The Republican Party started. So this idea that it's a Republican idea that our rights come from God this is bizarre. In 2012, this is, I think, as far back as he goes in history, as far as back as he's aware of, Mr. Paul Waldman. In 2012, for instance, vice presidential nominee Paul Ryan thundered in response to Barack Obama's supposedly tyrannical rule that even presidents need reminding that our rights come from nature and God and not from government. Again, that might be a completely dispassionate telling. Maybe Paul Ryan did thunder. I have never myself heard him thunder, but even presidents do need reminding that we have rights. Like all presidents need to be reminded of that. That seems basic to me. So I just want to read to you how he argues, how this gentleman, Paul Waldman, argues against what Justice Thomas said. Thomas began his speech by citing Thomas Jefferson's line in the Declaration of Independence, asserting that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Deploying the essay writing technique familiar to mediocre middle school students everywhere, he added, the American Heritage Dictionary of English Language defines self-evident as obviously true and requiring no proof, argument, or explanation. Fortunately, he declined to end his speech with, in conclusion, America is a land of contrasts. So here we have, the man knows that this is in the Declaration of Independence. Paul Waldman I'm talking about. He quotes the Declaration of Independence, and instead of admitting that that is actually the founding document of our country and that Thomas is right, he says Thomas is a middle schooler. That's his argument.
I haven't seen an argument yet. Everything you've read so far
It's not an argument, right, of
is
course.
just a
It's emoting.
hyperbolic characterization. A lot of loud adjectives and tendentious characterizations. The thundering, the middle schooler thing. It's just mockery. Where's the argument? Is there an argument at the bottom of the page there, Si?
Well, it gets closer to an argument, but I was very impressed with that paragraph because he starts out by saying, Thomas says this. And what you normally expect in an argument is the person said this, what's actually true is this. But instead of doing that, he said, Thomas said this, he's a middle schooler. Like he didn't do anything. So this is a terrible essay. So as proof, Thomas offered his own history growing up in the Jim Crow South. When you lived in a segregated world with palpable discrimination and the governments nearest to you enforced laws and customs that promoted unequal treatment, he said, it was obvious that your rights or your dignity did not come from those governments, but rather from God. That seems to me the simplest, most obvious argument. So this is Paul Waldman's response to that. So who was it who delivered the nation from the cruelty and injustice of Jim Crow? It was not a divine light of heaven sweeping across the land. It was government, or more specifically, democratic citizens who worked tirelessly to change the laws and eventually force those with power in the courts, legislatures, and the executive branch to join their cause. This makes me want to scream because I want to say to him, Mr. Waldman, who gave us the Jim Crow laws? I'll tell you who it was. It was democratic citizens who worked tirelessly to change the laws and forced those who were in power, courts, legislatures, and executive branch to join their cause. So both things were given to us by democracy. The question is not, was it democracy that delivered these laws? The question is, which of these laws is good and which of them is bad?
Right, and democracy doesn't answer that because it's already shown us both. I think I understand what Waldman's mistake is now, that you've read that part. I don't think he understands what the phrase "where rights come from" means.
No, right. I think you're right.
It seems like he thinks that if rights come from God, when a right is violated, there'll be a fireball that will smite the violator.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, clearly God doesn't want it.
The fact that God doesn't fix the injustice means that but only government can be the agent of ensuring rights.
Yeah, but also clearly only government in this case can be the agent of depriving people of their rights.
Right, but if for sure, but if we understood where rights come from as in a more philosophical way, what is the foundation of those rights intellectually, then you're right. We see both justice and injustice flow from government, often the same governmental system. But if what he means is, in this kind of talk about being a middle schooler, he thinks that who's Captain America now coming to restore rights to those who have lost them, or to protect rights, because God isn't doing it. Where's God? I don't see God.
Right, God's not doing it.
Puerile.
So clearly he doesn't care about this,
or he doesn't exist. It just feels like a angry atheist argument.
Well, there is, I think, an underlying atheism to this argument, but I think you're right, and a misunderstanding about what that means comes from, because governments are established in order to secure the right. I mean, I'm borrowing language, from our founding, but so the government can either secure our rights or fail to secure our rights. In the case of Jim Crow, it failed. In the case of the repeal of Jim Crow, it succeeded.
And the rights pre-existed government.
But the rights are under all, and he doesn't get. So I think it would be fair to ask Paul Waldman, was Jim Crow right or wrong? Because the government gave it to us. So was it right or wrong? Well, if you say it's wrong, that means the right underneath did not come from the government, and it can't have. And so I think he proved Thomas is correct.
Yes.
Here. I think he gave us a proof that, but I think you're right about the underlying atheism is kind of making him dumb, because Thomas never asks why. If God is so intent on providing all of us with these political rights, he took so long to offer them to almost anyone. Few citizens anywhere were guaranteed their supposedly God-given rights until a mere 250 years ago. And even then, it would be almost 200 years more before they were truly available to all Americans. Well, they're still not truly available to all Americans. I mean, the unborn don't get any of them. So does that mean God doesn't love the unborn? I think that Thomas would probably say there is no God, and if there was, he wouldn't care about the unborn.
Waldman would say that.
Or Waldman, yeah. But the I don't know what he would say actually, but God decided to allow thousands of generations of human beings to live from birth to death with no political rights. No, he didn't. God didn't allow that. They had rights that whole time. Their rights were violated.
Well,
but God didn't say those people didn't have rights. They had rights that whole time.
There's also chronological snobbery there. Imagine that before the Declaration of Independence, before the Americans, that people just didn't have any rights at all. It was despotism around the globe, back to the beginning of history, which is false.
That's just clearly false.
It's Americanist on top of everything else.
I mean, the rights weren't expressed in but a Roman citizen couldn't be crucified. That's not great. I mean, that other people could.
The innocent generally had a right to life. In most cultures, murder was prohibited.
Yeah, stealing was
property rights too. Certainly.
Yeah. This idea that we needed the Enlightenment, or before that, everything was just scrambling injustice everywhere, is insane. But that I do think a lot of people there. I don't think that their knowledge of history goes beyond the Enlightenment. I think they think that's where history began. Before that, why bother? But of course, the Magna Carta is a medieval document from medieval Christians.
The law, the Mosaic Law. I mean, this man may be Jewish with a name like Waldman. Does it say what he represents, what organization he represents?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you about him. Let's see, because he's a journalist, basically. Let's see. Paul Waldman is a journalist and author whose writing has appeared in dozens of publications. I love the name of his book, by the way. He writes The Cross Section, a newsletter about politics and culture, and hosts the podcast of the same name. His latest book is White Rural Rage. The
the threat to American democracy.
Okay, Paul. I'm wondering. It's weird. Like when I hear someone say white rural rage, like I just spent this wonderful time out in farm country in Wyoming, and you don't see a lot of white rural rage out there. You see people who are extremely polite and friendly, but maybe I missed it.
That would be a hard title to say if you had a hair lip. My goodness.
What's his name? Porky Pig. White rural rage. The threat to American democracy. That's the subtitle of it. Yeah. So Paul, as you know, I think he probably fits right on the MS now, but I don't think he understands the concepts that he's talking about. He wants to lecture Judge Thomas, but Judge Thomas is saying actually a very mild thing. He's saying the same thing Thomas Jefferson said. And you, Mr. Paul Waldman, you quoted Thomas Jefferson and then never addressed that. You never came back to say why Jefferson was wrong. You say Thomas is an idiot, or you imply that Thomas is an idiot. Explain why Thomas Jefferson is wrong, and explain why that Judge Thomas's reading of Jefferson is wrong. Because I don't think you can explain either of those. It's horrifying to think that argument has become, I just make the other guy look like an idiot, and then I don't have to deal with the argument. You're the one who quoted Thomas Jefferson. Tell us, Mr. Paul Waldman, what's wrong with what Thomas Jefferson said?
Bringing a little heat and a little snark, I mean that's currency in modern punditry.
Yeah.
But then you got to follow it up with another paragraph that has some substance to it, and he just stops with the snark.
Right. He never goes back and says, "Look, this is why." But now he does have this idea that, look, it was government, citizens, and I think that there is something positive to that, in which that I think that underneath all of that is a desire to evoke in the person your citizenship matters, and that's fine. But if you don't say that rights come from something deeper than government, then frankly, how do you ever say government was wrong? Was slavery wrong? Well, if rights come from government and government said slavery was okay, then slavery's not wrong. So the rights have to come from somewhere else.
This is the lesson of Nuremberg. And this is the natural law lesson of Nuremberg. The atrocities of Nazi Germany were legal, and the rights that he believes, or he thinks he believes, come from government, were denied by government to a class of people, and that should be okay in Paul Waldman's world. Paul Waldman's world.
Mr. Waldman.
So I think you're right.
Crazy.
I think this is about a God wound more than it's about
it's more about God
political thinking.
Yeah.
It's reminiscent of the New Atheism and the way Richard Dawkins spoke about God. It was whenever somebody would present him with a argument, it was always the big spaghetti monster in the sky. It was never taken serious. It was just a straw man or a mockery of whatever the person was opposing Dawkins. And that's what this feels like. You said when Si initially read this, you're like, where's the argument? I don't see it. And I think that's the whole.
We get that in our comments. Sometimes you'll see like we're doing a show or something and the comments are going along and maybe people are arguing about Orthodoxy or Catholicism or something like that. And then some genius comes in and goes, I don't believe in any of your sky gods, and then departs. And you go, well,
boom, mic drop.
Like, what, are we supposed to be like, just, oh, man.
Never thought about that.
I never thought that. It never occurred to me to think about whether or not God is real. No, there's this pretense that things are so obvious that there's no point in arguing about them is such a sad pretense. Like, hang around and ask, why do you people believe in God? And they will give you the answers. Like, our listeners will give you their answers. But you don't do that. You just come and drop a bomb. Who cares about your flying spaghetti monster? Boom, I'm out of here. What?
But you have to have a little compassion for the Paul Waldmans of the world, because if you're temperamentally seriously committed to things like human rights and basic rights and wrongs, and you engage in a thought exercise to try to find out and to try to assure yourself why you believe in them, and you've ruled out God, and right. We've already demonstrated very easily that government as itself can't be the agent that gives rights, because because it can act despotically and deny people rights, but we still believe that the rights are there. So what's left? It's almost like it's a variant of the argument for morality, for God's existence. We believe instinctually that some things are right and just right and just wrong. Well, who's the lawgiver there, and who's the rights giver? If you don't believe in God, you're in a pickle.
Yeah, that's what Sam Harris, the atheist, one of the millionaire atheists, he has really tried to make an atheist, to ground an atheist morality in reason. And I think by and large, it's fair to say he's failed at that. But it's a noble effort in the sense that I think that if you ask Sam Harris, do rights come from government, he would be at least smart enough to go, no, that rights come from our reasoning about the value of a human being, or something like that. And I could accept if Paul Waldman were to say, you don't have to ground it in God, just ground it in the fact that we have this in us. We don't, we know some things are right and some things are wrong. And then you would just prescind from the whole God question. And that wouldn't be convincing to me, but it would be like, well, we can talk about this,
As long as it's something transcendent.
Yes, it has to be something that's beyond laws or constitutions or governments. And I think that Sam Harris has tried to do that. And I think that I don't think ultimately you can do it, because ultimately, who cares if there's no God? Who
Well, that may not be
cares?
too far. I mean,
you got to get people to care.
Depending on who you ask, our founding fathers, or some of them, weren't probably too far. The whole nature's God thing and kind of deifying reason, the Enlightenment attitude about God. Probably not Trinitarian. Probably
definitely not in Thomas Jefferson's case.
Yeah. And so you end up with a kind of deist natural God. At least it's something transcendent. But maybe that's a halfway house between what Harris is talking about and Catholicism.
That's a great point. That as a halfway house, we could all meet there. I do feel like that. I think, okay, so you don't accept that Jesus is God. You don't accept that God is Trinity, that God is love, all these things that we say about God. But you can say that there is a nature to the human being, and that nature was put there by a God. Whether it's the demiurge,
transcendent
or
power of some kind.
Just say the creator, like Thomas Jefferson did. Because the reason Thomas Jefferson says the creator is that Thomas Jefferson is probably closer in his religious beliefs to Sam Harris than he is to you and me, in many ways. I'm not sure entirely, but in many ways. So, but Sam Harris can't get himself to that halfway point because he's got to deny God. He has to deny. He won't let go of that. And so you can't say that there is a nature beyond, like, the materialist nature. There's not a nature in things because a creator gave them their nature.
I wonder if that's because the Jeffersonian notion, or the founding fathers' notion, has kind of run its course. Did it burn itself out philosophically? Is there, or because we've had centuries of kind of ascendant Orthodox Christianity, not small o Orthodox, not deism, not Jeffersonian nature worship.
Maybe the thing was running on the fumes of that.
Yeah,
so to speak, morally.
Yeah, and I just wonder, is Harris too, if assuming that you're right in what your conjecture about his inability to accept God, is he too colored by evangelical Christianity being the kind of...
I didn't think about that, but yes, I think that's the case.
Yeah.
Yes, that does strike me as a very good observation, that one of the reasons why, like St. Paul basically tells Christians from time to time, don't make us look like idiots. And that's a pretty important thing that we forget sometimes. And sometimes when we, like Matt Fradd's been doing these interviews on DNA and evolution, and he doesn't accept the neo-Darwinist explanation, but he's like, that doesn't make me a 6-day creationist either. Like, I don't think he used those words, but the point is, don't make us look like fools. But push deeper. Try to push deeper on the science. Get the science to admit what it does not know. And I think there's a case to be made that there is a lot of foolish Christianity. Foolish in that it does not read Scripture the way the Catholic Church reads Scripture. It does not read Scripture the way the Orthodox read Scripture. It reads Scripture in a very foolish and childish way.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but I think we wouldn't even have to invoke the foolish ones, even just kitschy Christianity, or just normal, ordinary, middle of the road Protestant Christianity or Catholic Christianity has been kind of the paradigm for thinking about God in the West and certainly the United States for centuries. That maybe someone like Harris can't distinguish between a more generic Jeffersonian divine transcendent power that is moral lawgiver and rights giver, without his thinking about that being colored by any coloration in any detail in Western American Christianity.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Like he's
if I accept Jefferson, I got to accept all you.
Yeah. Then I got to have felt banners. I got to play guitar. I got to go Alleluia, 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 or whatever.
Don't make fun of that.
Well, you said you liked that music. No, you said you hated that music.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I do in fact. But praise be the Lord. Oh, I can't control myself. Yeah, I think that's right. You want to say to a person like Harris, you don't have to come all the way in, but there is a halfway place. And actually the founding, because it was people like Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson and people like John Adams, who probably was a Christian, they crafted something that was clearly for a Christian society. It was made up primarily of Christians. But that it wasn't meant to be Christian in that it only worked if everybody was a confessing Christian. Mm-hmm. It was trying to, but it certainly wasn't anti-Christian. And I think nature's God is a place where we could meet.
That would be an interesting kind of evangelical or evangelistic project for us to take on, to try to pull the new atheists, or whoever represents atheism these days.
Satan, I think. No, sorry.
Like if we could just get back to the transcendent in some way, like let's start becoming Emersonians or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's pull ourselves back from pure ugly materialism and atheism, and maybe beauty is a door to that. Maybe wonder. Maybe whatever we can find and make common cause on, to get to something beyond. Right. What we can see, touch, and hear.
We have to agree on morals, or we can't be a society.
No, and we're seeing the crumbling because of that.
Right, and I don't think we're going to agree on relativism as our moral foundation. I just don't think that will convince enough people. So those who are really determined that we will just wait these Christians out. You can wait all you want. You're just not going to convince Muslims. You're not going to convince Hindus. You're not going to convince Christians. You might convince some Buddhists. I don't know. But Jews, you're not going to convince. We know that there's a God, and that underneath that part of the fabric of this creation is moral. And so you figure out how to work with us. And if it needs to be at let's say, what's the lowest level we can meet at? Well, let's at least meet there.
The cool thing about all this conversation is that there's actually a similar one happening online with some people out there on very popular podcasts, like the Whatever podcast. There's a gentleman out there who I know he's kind of taking shots at certain people from Catholic Answers, and he's not Catholic. He claims to be Orthodox, but he's goes on these podcasts and talks to these people who are living, very wild lifestyles, and they always get into the topic of rights, and he always breaks it down and demolishes their understanding of what a right is, because what is a right, where do you get, where does it come from, and he breaks down their worldviews. So he's fighting back against moral relativism, but I think there's a missing component there. But I mean, again,
well, I'd be interested to see that person's, because there's some people at Catholic Answers I don't like. Maybe he's picking on the same people that I don't like.
Yeah, probably.
But,
I'm right here, Cy. Come on.
Just quiet down, Todd.
Yeah.
But look, every right is a duty, or it's not a right. Like that if Todd has a right to life, I have a duty not to violate that. Well, who can impose a duty on me? Only something superior to me can impose a duty on me. So I just don't see how you're going to get people to care enough. This is what I think the fundamental problem with Sam Harris's project is. People have to acknowledge that they have a duty. They will not acknowledge that if there's not something above them to impose that.
Well, you could
duty.
say the popular will can impose a duty, but then we can easily posit a scenario where the popular will imposes a duty that we agree is immoral, like kill all the Jews or enslave people of a certain color.
Or there's always the Ayn Rand people who will just be like, "That's all right. I'm pure will and I don't care about the popular." Like they. So there's always going to be a Nietzschean to mess up your soup, unless there's someone who can tell me that I have a duty. It's someone that has authority to tell me that. Then how am I going to become a creature that actually cares about my duty to you?
Even in European monarchies, recall it was always the spiritual power that crowned the temporal. That was until
Napoleon.
Yeah,
he
crowned
went out
himself.
of his way to say no.
And he's kind of like the first modern ruler in that regard.
He is, yes.
But it was reflective. Even kings, whom we democratic Americans consider, tyrannical by nature and self-made and everything else, they realized there was a hierarchy and there was an order from which authority flowed.
Yeah,
and because it's self-evident, which I think the dictionary would define as.
Right. By the way, Napoleon died a Catholic. He died in communion with the church. So he came back. You can come back too if you're away. I got to go. I'll leave you guys to it for a minute.
Well, I was just going to conclude there. That way we can continue the setup here. But we're going to have a guest in the second hour, which you've been working with, at least.
Father Mike Driscoll.
That's right, yeah.
He is the best.
Okay.
Yes, he's a priest from the Diocese of Peoria, where I worked for 3 years. I was an employee there at the Chancery in the late 90s. And he's a brilliant fellow. He's a parish priest. He has a doctorate from Liberty University, I believe. Either Liberty or Regent, one of those kind of hardcore evangelical schools. And his first book for us was Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment.
20 Answers, yeah.
No, he did 2 20 Answers booklets for us as well.
Okay.
Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment was
That's
a
right.
full-length book.
That's right, okay.
And it was about 2 things, really. It was about how do we discern whether in a given case where someone has got troubles, behavioral troubles or something, whether the origin of it is preternatural or natural, whether it's some kind of disease or whether there's demonic influence there. Because more and more it seems like we want to find demons lurking behind every...
it's always demons, right?
It's always demons. And then his new book for us, which you're going to talk about. I don't want to preempt too much of the conversation.
But this is going to be a teaser for people to log in the second hour and listen in. But with that, we're going to go ahead and finish up this hour. The first hour, we're going to have the one and only John Martinoni to answer your questions on effective apologetics. So when we come back in about 3 minutes, ask your question to John at 888-318-7884.